It's the Whiskey Wizard.
Hello and welcome to the Whiskey Wizard, where we say that whiskey making takes scientific knowledge, an artisan's skill and dedication, and a bit of the wizard's alchemy of light, air, earth, and fire. Tonight we continue with part 2 in our series talking about the chemistry of whiskey. Again, we want to take things a bit farther so that our audience is equipped to make the most of their enjoyment of whiskey. The goal here is to link flavors and aromas with specific compounds derived from the stuff and steps involved in making whiskey. Last time we looked at many compounds produced in the grain mashing and fermentation processes that have a big influence on a whiskey's flavor and complexity. As the yeast breaks down sugars, it also produces alcohol and other organics, some of which can combine to form esters. Esters are responsible for a broad spectrum of fruity, herbal, and floral flavor sensations in our finished spirit. So let's take a look at distillation and barrel aging processes. Ethanol and fusel alcohols are produced during fermentation. These are higher alcohols and are generally not desirable for taste, and some, like methanol, are poisonous. Methanol, acetaldehyde, and some other volatile compounds get removed in the heads, while heavier, oilier compounds such as propanol get removed in the tails or feints of the distillation run. The latter would give unpleasant burnt or rubbery flavors if allowed to find their way into the spirit. The former, well, can make you go blind, and that's why you want to buy a commercial product from experienced distillers and not your cousin Albert's first basement moonshine experiment. Some sulfur compounds can be created in fermentation that need to be removed. These could add stinky, rotten egg flavors. Fortunately, the copper surface of the still tends to capture these, so long as it has sufficient retention times and enough free, non-complex copper sites on its surface. Urea and ethyl carbamate, not good for the taste of whiskey, are also produced in fermentation and are typically removed during the distillation process. If you ever get a buttery taste in whiskey, that's diacetyl. Diacetyl comes from bacterial metabolism in the mash, and it can be a good thing at 1 part per million, lending to buttery notes and a nice mouthfeel, but it doesn't take much more to cause cheesy off flavors in the taste profile. As the mash is warmed for distillation, some compounds, such as eugenol, may form to add flavorful cloves and baking spice aromas to the spirit. The esters created in fermentation are a bit more volatile than ethanol, and some are lost in the heads, but usually most of these are the lighter compounds that are actually not desirable. Hopefully, many of the good flavor-enhancing esters remain captured in the heart of the run with most of the ethanol. In fact, peerless small batch American whiskeys target distilling to finish at lower proofs, staying under or as close to the 125 maximum for barrel aging. They say that doing this helps to retain as much of these desirable congener flavor compounds as possible that were developed in the mash and fermentation phases of production, while avoiding the need to dilute the spirit before it goes into the barrel. Now we get to barrel maturation, the final step, and it's clear to be sure that whiskeys, as we know it, fine wines, and other distilled spirits could not exist without the wonderful chemistry that happens when fermented or distilled product meets oak. When a fine new make spirit sleeps for years in a quality made and properly prepared oak barrel, pure magic often results. Suffice it to say that no one understands all the chemistry going on here, but we've known for centuries how well it works. After the slow toasting of barrels in toasting ovens, we break down some of the complex compounds in oak that enable some of its sugars to be extracted by the alcohol and water of the spirit over time. It also allows for the release of compounds called lactones that help to provide coconut flavors and the lush mouthfeel we get with aged whiskey. The subsequent flame charring of the inside of the barrel creates a 2 millimeter thick charcoal layer that the spirit must pass through as it expands into the wood in warmer conditions and then contracts back into the barrel during cooler times. That can add some smoky phenol astringency, but also acts as a carbon filter to remove unwanted, longer chain organics that we don't really want in our whiskey. Oak wood has a complex cellular structure, 95% of which is comprised of cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. 5% of wood is other stuff. Hemicellulose can break down into simpler sugars when heated. These can add some complex sweet flavors. Lignin can add some light astringency. Wood also releases tannins that also add a subtle astringency and rich meaty flavors. Also produced is guaiacil, which brings rich barbecued flavors. Some tannins can combine over time, losing their youthful astringency and mellowing into something many describe simply as beautiful. Oak and spirit interaction releases lactones such as cis and trans-free methyl 4-octanolide, which is responsible for the coconut and general nutty richness that we associate with barrel aging. Another key lactone from lignin breakdown is vanillin, which is released to add the vanilla profile so typical and I think essential in whiskeys. Other lactone contributions include hexanol, which adds fresh grassy flavors, 2,3-methylbutanol for maltiness and toasted sugar, and seringaldehyde for spicy, smoky, and almond notes. And ethanol reactions with some of these wood compounds can, over time, add some more fruity and tart esters to the mix. American oak tends to lend more perfumed and floral compounds to the whiskey, while French oak a bit more vanilla and a lot of rich butterscotch. In the rickhouse, as we've noted in our past episode on barrel maturation, there are many microclimates, if you will, depending on a barrel's address within the structure. Since temperature can have a significant impact on the rate of these chemical reactions and the balance of byproducts from these reactions, this is why there can be so much variation from one barrel to another. Of course, since no two oaks and therefore no two barrels are exactly the same in terms of their wood's properties, this also throws in more splendid variation to the mix of flavors and aromatics that a whiskey may be imbued with. I think that even some compounds that are considered less desirable or as off flavors can also play a role in enhancing a whiskey when present in subtle enough concentrations. Flavors like leather and shoelaces can be positives to a dram's character, complexity, and enjoyment, again when they are not overdone. I think you've all experienced that before. And the further blend of some of these compounds can produce other unique flavors, just as mixing blue and red makes a new color purple. Then finally, we have finishing. We've done a whole episode on finishing. But obviously, if we take our whiskey and put it in a barrel, hogshead, or port pipe previously containing wine, sherry, rum, or cognac for another 2 years, all of the flavor compounds unique to the previous contents will be released by the wood to infuse our now well-aged whiskey with even more character and complexity. As we wrap this up, I wanted to note that Paul Hughes, renowned chemist and whiskey enthusiast, asserts that finished whiskey spirit contains hydrophobic clusters that hold on to many of these flavor compounds, making them less available to our nosing and tasting. He says that some added water releases many of these, allowing you to get their full effect. He claims this is why, to so many folks, some addition of water enhances the flavor experience when tasting whiskey. So it's a good thing to try, especially with high-proof spirit. And as we can see, each step in whiskey making, if done properly, can add new desired compounds and their flavors while tending toward removing others that are less desirable. I think great whiskeys are simply those that best achieve this aim of adding the most good congeners while removing the largest amount of those that would detract from our enjoyment. So look, when someone less experienced with sampling and appreciating whiskey says there can't possibly be all those flavors in there, you can all let them know that there are over 100 different compounds that are created in the process of making whiskey, and that each is distinctly responsible for a specific aroma or flavor, and that some even combine to create additional flavor characteristics. So yes, there are a ton of real flavors and real aromas in whiskey. So that's it for this two-part segment on the chemistry of whiskey. I hope you learned something and found it enjoyable. This is Douglas Dunbar, the Whiskey Wizard, for the Whiskey Roundtable.
Hey, whiskey fans!
You can catch the Whiskey Wizard this Friday evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, live on the Whiskey Roundtable.
Grab a favorite pour and join in the fun as they inform us while tasting and evaluating a new whiskey selection on each show.
So tune in, hang out, and enjoy some laughs with the friends on this Friday's live Whiskey Roundtable YouTube videocast.
Cheers and Slàinte mhath!